Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. An agricultural disaster declared in several counties across southern Alberta. Plus, Canada now boasts the fastest man in the world in Olympic decathlon. And they're off. Horse races return to Lethbridge for the first time since the pandemic.
Your nation. Your province. Your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks for joining us. Nearly 20 counties in southern Alberta have declared an agricultural disaster on their crops. Rocky View County is the latest Alberta municipality to make such a declaration due to severe drought. It joins Wheatland County and 16 others in southern Alberta, where some areas are experiencing 1 in 50-year drought conditions. Dan Henrive of Rocky View says meat and other food prices are probably going to increase for consumers because of the combination of low yields and high feed prices. Canada's major railways are now predicting an 8.6% drop in the volume of grain being shipped this year. The severe drought has also impacted Vulcan County, Foothills County, and the County of St. Paul, just to name a few. They joined Rocky View County and declared agricultural disasters of their own. Farmers in Lethbridge and surrounding area have also experienced dry weather and crop failures. Staff from Lethbridge County will be discussing the idea of what declaring an agricultural disaster could mean for the county at their next meeting.
We had a couple of questions we weren't sure about, whether or not if you do you have to declare a state of emergency to be able to get into federal or provincial government funding if you're a producer. We don't know the answer to that. And the biggest concept of the whole thing is, I guess, we have quite a few irrigated acres in the county, so it's kind of hard to apply for a state of emergency on that. Like if we completely ran out of water, that'd be a different story.
The term disaster, I think, is probably, the definition of that is different when it comes to counties. It's a disaster no matter how we look at it as far as crop production and the implications and losses that are occurring this year. I think when a county incurs the term disaster, it actually means that they're going to be seeking some sort of relief package. So I would suspect that when the yields become more official and more crops are harvested, that many or most of the province will be considered a disaster.
The Alberta government is urging Ottawa to implement the agri-recovery program to provide help for farmers to cover uninsurable costs, which also include costs that are incurred during a drought season. One of Alberta's World Heritage sites had to contend with a little more heat than just the August weather today. Flames were seen outside Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump this afternoon. Fort Macleod RCMP say they received a call about a structural and grass fire at the Interpretive Center. The call came in around 12:05 p.m. that flames were shooting from an exhaust pipe on the rooftop of one of the buildings. No word yet on exactly what caused the blaze or the amount of damage that it has caused. Federal Health Minister Patty Hajdu isn't holding back at all in a letter that she sent to Alberta Health Minister Tyler Shandro. She says she agrees with the Canadian Pediatric Society's assessment that the province's plan to lift all of its COVID-19 health restrictions is, quote, unnecessary and a risky gamble. Hajdu notes recent modeling predicts a serious surge in infections fueled by the Delta variant and says she wants to better understand the rationale and science behind Alberta's decision. Meanwhile, Brett Boyden, a spokesman for Tyler Shandro, says Dr. Hinshaw has been very clear on the sound medical reasoning behind her decisions to lift the latest COVID health restrictions. The Alberta Institute is claiming victory after a petition that demanded the Alberta government release their inquiry into the province's response to the first wave of COVID in Alberta went viral. They say that after months of the province saying the report would be released, they announced Tuesday morning that they'd changed their minds and would be keeping the report a secret. According to the Institute, a petition received more than 2,000 signatures in a matter of hours, as well as media attention, which caused the government to change their mind again. They say Health Minister Tyler Shandro announced that afternoon that the report will be released sometime this week. A Lethbridge woman recently co-authored a book detailing stories of educators within the school system. As Micah Quinn explains, she's excited to share the experiences of our school teachers and showcase them to the public.
Definition of a teacher: one who instructs by precept, example, or experience, one who guides the study of, one who imparts knowledge.
Lori McIntosh works as a full-time kindergarten teacher in Lethbridge at the Children of St. Martha Elementary School, and she co-authored the book, Teachers These Days, Stories and Strategies for Reconnection, with psychologist Dr. Jody Carrington. The book hit the #1 spot for bestsellers on Amazon.ca.
It's a book full of strategies, stories. We had stories submitted from over 300 educators across North America. And it's a place, kind of a safe place for people to land as we head back into the classrooms and we head back into those teaching situations, allowing people to really focus on the strategies they use to build connection.
McIntosh says the book took 2 years to finish, and the two authors worked together through an online format to complete the book.
We knew through this writing process that it was something special, being co-authored by a psychologist and a teacher. We knew it was special for the powerful stories. But it just goes to show that people are really flocking to the book and getting their copies as quickly as they can as they try and read it before they head back for a new year in September. But I really hope they see the value in the message and just feel affirmed and feel loved as they fall into our words.
McIntosh says she's hoping to sell the book at local bookstores once people come into the businesses and start requesting it. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Thank you, Micah. It's off to the races this weekend as horse racing is back at the Rocky Mountain Turf Club once again. The 2021 Canadian Indian National Finals Tour Rodeo is making a stop in Lethbridge this weekend. Carson Marzouk has the details on what you can expect.
The Canadian Indian National Finals Tour Rodeo is the first of its kind in Canada and is being put on by the Blood Tribe Ag Society from August 6th to 8th at the Rocky Mountain Turf Club. Blood Tribe Ag Society board member Wayne Abibi says after a long 17 months without any rodeos, everyone is excited to be back.
This is a chance for them to come back, to bring our rodeo families together, and not just for our participants, but for all of our family members who are part of it.
The Ag Society is hosting 16 events, with the winner of each moving on to the Indian National Finals Rodeo in Las Vegas from October 19th to 23rd. Due to border restrictions, cowboys and cowgirls in Canada haven't been able to compete in rodeos in the U.S., with this being the first opportunity they've had since March 2020.
People have been wanting to do this. A lot of them have been training on their own and alone, and to come together to have a big event, we're sure it's going to be outstanding.
Roughly 300 cowboys and cowgirls are anticipated to be in Lethbridge this weekend, with the addition of their families and supporters. BB adds the rodeo is expected to bring in a good chunk of economic revenue to the city.
The economic impacts are great. We're thinking about $250,000 just generated from here.
If everything goes as planned, the Ag Society hopes to make this an annual event.
What this does for us is it gives us an opportunity to showcase to a different community. What we would like to see is for us to be able to come back here annually and include it in our portfolio of rodeos.
Up for grabs is a combined $50,000. For Bridge City News, I'm Carson Marzouk.
Thank you, Carson. Calgary police say they're investigating an arson at a memorial for residential school victims at City Hall. Investigators say security cameras caught a man who appeared to light the fire just before midnight Tuesday. Photos show damage to children's shoes sitting at the site of the memorial and other objects burned to ashes. Police say the hate crimes unit is helping with the investigation to look for evidence of hate-related motivation. Samaritan's Purse is aiding families who lost their homes and belongings in catastrophic wildfires in the British Columbia interior. The Christian relief organization has moved a convoy of vehicles, including a disaster relief unit tractor trailer, to the region, along with trained leaders who will equip and deploy cleanup volunteers. More than 200 wildfires are burning in BC, destroying homes and threatening many interior BC communities and First Nations reserves, including Lytton, and Samaritan's Purse is working with them to determine potential assistance. Tammy Suter, Canadian Disaster Relief Manager for Samaritan's Purse, said in a press release, quote, "The opportunity for residents to return to their homes with trained volunteers to safely sift through rubble and recover what wasn't burned is a critical step in their recovery." Samaritan's Purse has extensive experience responding to wildfires across Canada, including the 2016 blaze that burned through Fort McMurray. For the first time since the pandemic started, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is talking about making COVID-19 vaccinations mandatory for some federally regulated industries like airlines and railroads. Trudeau was in Montreal today for a child care fund agreement with Premier Francois Legault, who used the opportunity to announce that he will be introducing vaccine passports shortly. Legault says the province appears to be at the start of a fourth wave of the pandemic, with experts suggesting infections, hospitalizations, and deaths will continue rising in the weeks ahead. Health Minister Christian Dubé will announce details in the coming days about how the system will work and when it will begin. Trudeau, meanwhile, says that he fully supports U.S. President Joe Biden's plan to require federal employees and contractors to show proof of vaccination or be subject to mandatory masking and weekly testing for COVID-19. He says the government is in talks with the Federal Public Service about whether there are some workplaces where vaccinations should be made mandatory. Both the NDP and the Greens say they're being flooded with calls from people aged 65 and up who suddenly find themselves cut off from monthly government payments due to the pandemic benefits that they relied on last year. The $2,000 a month in Canada Emergency Response Benefit they received through much of 2020 has rendered them ineligible for the income supplement typically available to low-income seniors. New Democrat MP Daniel Blakey says it's not right to do this to Canada's poorest seniors, and he's calling on the federal government to change its approach to slashing the guaranteed income supplement based on benefits. Infrastructure Minister Catherine McKenna announced a $40 million deep-water port project in Nunavut as the federal government prepares for a possible election. The Baffin Island community will see the port built after decades of lobbying the federal government.
We are announcing today that Transport Canada is contributing $40 million to improve the efficiency of Nunavut's offshore fishing industry through the construction of a new deep water port in Kikitarjuak on the main route of the Northwest Passage. We're also contributing more than $2 million so that residents in 5 communities across Nunavut can have increased access to potable water, and the communities can better provide waste and wastewater services while also treating and managing wastewater efficiently.
As Ontario prepares to welcome back students to the classroom next month, every classroom in the province without mechanical ventilation systems will have a standalone HEPA unit upon students' return. The education minister made the announcement a day after his back-to-school plan was unveiled. Stephen Leche said schools across the province will have improvements in air quality in order to allow kids to return to in-person learning.
Today, I'm proud on behalf of our government to announce an additional $25 million investment for the purchase of approximately 20,000 additional standalone HEPA filters or HEPA units, which can improve air quality where there are challenges with ventilation within our schools. The additional funding announced today, combined with our past investment, will ensure that all occupied learning environments, including classrooms and gyms, libraries, childcare rooms, portables, and other instructional spaces without mechanical ventilation will now have a standalone HEPA filter placed within it when students return this fall.
The Supreme Court of Canada has dismissed a request from a family of a man who killed 10 people to keep some information barred from view in the Toronto van attack case. Alec Minasian also injured 16 people when he drove a rental van down a sidewalk in 2018. His family was fighting efforts by 7 media outlets to access materials seized when police executed a search of the home he shares with relatives. Immigration Minister Marco Mendicino isn't revealing the numbers and whereabouts of the first plane load of Afghan refugees to arrive in the country. The plane touched down in Toronto yesterday, and more planes carrying Afghans who contributed to Canada's mission are expected to arrive in the next days and weeks. Mendicino says the government is dealing with an urgent and volatile situation in Afghanistan as the international coalition forces continue to withdraw from the country and the Taliban gains ground. Turning our attention to Tokyo now, Canadians have won gold, silver, and bronze medals at the Olympics today, boosting the country's medal count to 18. Canada now boasts the fastest man in the world and only the 4th person in history to top the 9,000-point mark in the Olympic decathlon. 31-year-old Damien Warner of London, Ontario, won the gold medal and shattered the Olympic record in the 10-discipline event. Warner was congratulated by several of the athletes he dominated over the course of the 2 days when he draped himself in a Canadian flag and posed for photographers with a huge smile on his face. The track and field community considers the Olympic decathlon winner the world's greatest athlete. And yesterday, 26-year-old Andre DeGrasse blasted down the track in just 19.62 seconds to win the gold medal in the men's 200-meter and set a new Canadian record. Meanwhile, his mother, Beverly DeGrasse, says she's on a high and doesn't know how to come down after her son Andre's gold medal win in the 200-meter run. Unable to attend the games herself due to the pandemic restrictions, she says even though she was expecting the win, it was surreal to witness it on television.
I mean, I'm super proud and super excited. I feel like I'm on a high and I don't know how to come down. You know, even though like I was expecting it, it was just still like so surreal to really witness it. Well, at least over the television. I guess everybody's going to be after him now. You know, I wonder if he's going to have time for himself now, you know, basically. Because, I mean, like, even before he had the medals, like the gold medal, you know, there's already so much demand for him. So I expect it will be even more now.
And that is one proud mama. Well, the Canadian women's soccer team practiced Thursday at a training field just outside Tokyo in preparation for the Olympic final against Sweden. The gold medal game is set for a Friday kickoff at International Stadium, Yokohama.
We've been looking forward to this day for the last month and a half almost. So all of our prep, all of our hard work that we've put into this tournament kind of leads up to this moment for us. So we're excited to get to the day already. I think for us coming into the tournament, our big thing was to change the color of the medal. Like knowing that we've won back-to-back bronze, our goal was to change that color. And we've done that. But another point of our goal was to win gold. So I think that our team is so hard on ourselves that silver isn't good enough for us right now, and we're pushing for that gold no matter what. So we came for that gold, and that's the objective, and I don't think we'd ever be willing to settle for second.
And we wish those ladies all the best in their match tomorrow. Closer to home, turning our attention to the weather, scorching heat and lightning strikes have sparked more than 100 new fires in BC this week. The BC Wildfire Service says almost 36 of nearly 300 active fires have the potential to endanger people and property. The fires have promoted new evacuation orders in several regions. The weekend forecast calls for showers over most of BC, which could give firefighters a bit of a break. Meanwhile, a heat warning is still in effect for Lethbridge, but will southern Alberta have to contend with the smoke or rain in the near future? I will tell you right after this short break. Welcome back. Heat warning still in effect for much of southern Alberta. Looking ahead to this evening, though, we are seeing the development of a thunderstorm after midnight. Should be clearing up in the morning, though, with hazy conditions and a southwest wind tomorrow at 20 kilometers per hour, gusting to 40 k at times. 31 degrees, though, so remaining fairly warm into Saturday, 27 with partly cloudy skies. Sunday, mainly cloudy. Could see some showers, too, actually, on a Sunday. High of only 20 degrees. It's going to feel quite chilly compared to the 32 and 31 that we've been experiencing. 23 for Monday with partly cloudy skies, up to 26 on Tuesday, and back up to 30 degrees on Thursday. So we're doing a little tiny dip in the roller coaster there, but still, for the most part, staying above the average high, except for coming up this weekend. It's going to be a little bit cooler on Sunday and Monday. So the average high for this time of year, 26, average low 11. 38 degrees was our high temperature right there back in 1961, and in 2006 we had our lowest temperature, which was a very chilly 4 degrees. It's cold for August. 6:08 is when the sun rose this morning, and sunset this evening 9:07 p.m. So you know what that means. That means we're just a little tad under 15 hours now of daylight, 14 hours and 59 minutes exactly. Looking at 23 degrees tomorrow in Victoria, 23 also in Vancouver, chance of showers there. Edmonton and Calgary, 24 and 27, could see possibilities of some showers there. Looking to the rest of the prairies, looking at some hazy conditions over in Saskatoon and Regina. Also seeing a risk of a thunderstorm tomorrow in Saskatoon, high of 30 degrees, 29 in Regina, 27 in Winnipeg, sunshine and hazy conditions there as well. As we look to central Canada, Toronto's high 29 degrees, lots of sunshine, beautiful 29 and 30 degrees in Montreal tomorrow. High humidity as well in this area, to humidex of around 35. So yeah, keeping it warm right there in central Canada. Over to the east, we're looking at showers in Fredericton, high of 25. Periods of drizzle also in Halifax, 22 degrees. We're looking at winds also up to 40 kilometers per hour, up to 50 k per hour winds in Charlottetown with showers as well. 26 the high in St. John's with up to 60 kilometer per hour winds. So there you have it. That is your weather forecast.
Today's weather is brought to you, rain or shine, by the Gym in the North. Top-notch equipment and customized classes in Lethbridge's North End.
A First Nation in southern Saskatchewan has become a major shareholder in Atlas Growers, an Edmonton-based medicinal cannabis company. Pasqua First Nation says it will also work with Atlas Growers on an indigenous cannabis product line of topical creams called Mino Aki, or Good Earth. Chief Matthew T. Pegon says the First Nation likes the fact that the company wants to concentrate on medicinal cannabis for all kinds of aches and pains. The company aims to launch the topical creams in 3 to 4 months. A surge in exports pushed Canada's trade surplus to $3.2 billion in June. In volume terms, June exports rose 7% and imports fell 2.2%. Stats Canada says the return to surplus follows a $1.6 billion deficit in May. The agency says total exports increased 8.7% to reach a record $53.8 billion in June, with gains in 9 of 11 subsectors that included a 22.9% rise in exports of energy products. Now here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 45 points to 20,375. The Dow was up 271 points to 35,064. The S&P 500 was up 26 points to 4,429, and the Nasdaq was up 114 points to 14,895. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 94 cents to 69.09 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 2 cents to 4.14 US. Gold was down 9 cents to 18.04 US an ounce, and silver was even to finish at 25.16 US an ounce. Wheat is at $425 per metric ton, barley $420, canola is at $876, and corn is at $450 per metric ton. Live cattle were down $1.48 to $122.57. Feeder cattle were down $1.55 to $157.65. Lean hogs remain unchanged at $109.48, and the Canadian dollar was up slightly to finish at 80 cents even US.
one of our top stories today. Federal Health Minister Patty Hajdu is worried about Alberta's plan to lift all of COVID health restrictions. She tells Alberta Health Minister Tyler Shandro in a letter that she agrees with the Canadian Pediatric Society's description of the move as an unnecessary and risky gamble. She says recent modeling for Alberta forecasts a more serious resurgence in cases fueled by the Delta variant, but an Alberta Health spokesman says there are very clear medical reasons behind the government's move. Coming up, are you into collectibles? Well, right after the break, we introduce you to a local business owner who specializes in them. Keep it right here.
The COVID-19 pandemic, with its restrictions, has certainly altered our normal routines and recreational pursuits. Now, one of the interesting fallouts has been an increase in people buying collectibles such as hockey cards, which was very popular when I was a kid. Joining me now to talk about it is Grant Gatto. He's the manager of Pirates Cove, a collectibles and memorabilia store located right here in Lethbridge. Grant, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thanks for having me.
Now, are you seeing the same thing here in Southern Alberta? Have you had more people come in looking for trading cards right now?
Oh, very much so. We got our store here and our store in Strathmore. We've noticed an increase in both places. I think a lot of people are stuck at home. They're either digging their old collections out of the closet or they're binging some old media that's spurring the urge on again.
You know, it's funny. I think I must have around 600 or 700 hockey cards. A lot of the old mid to late 70s O-Pee-Chees. Are they still pretty hot right now, a hot item, the O-Pee-Chees?
They are very much so. And the problem with a lot of that, though, is everybody's digging that out of their closet. And the Chinese factories that make all the supplies for it, they've been shut down. So there's been a back order for almost every single supply industry wide for the last year, too, because so many people are getting back into it.
You know, maybe I should bring some of my cards into you then, and you can appraise them, and maybe I can sell some of them to you, too.
We'd love to see them, for sure.
So outside of just being stuck at home and maybe reliving some great memories from the past as kids, why do you think people are collecting a lot of these cards right now and other memorabilia right now?
Well, there's a little bit of extra money rolling around with the benefits checks. We've noticed that the money definitely flows that way. And there's some people that are out of work and they're hoping for making a little side money on it too. If you've had something that's been in the closet for 10 years, you need some extra bucks, yeah, it's time to part with it.
How about in the closet for 45 years? You know, it's funny. I have this collection.
Even better.
I have this collection of O-Pee-Chees that are rounded on the corners and they're autographed. Like it's, you know, like
Nice.
Daryl Sittler, Lanny McDonald, you know, Guy Lafleur, Larry Robinson, Rogie Van Shawn. You know, there's a set of 21. They were all autographed,
Excellent.
not like original autographs, of course, but from the factory, right? I guess that might be worth a few bucks.
Oh, for sure. And there's a lot of people trying to finish those sets, so bring those in if you're interested in parting with them.
Now, I heard something recently I was reading a story about a Wayne Gretzky rookie hockey card that brought in over $1 million.
Yeah, that's when you get into the graded cards. When you with some collectibles, you have the option of getting them graded. So you can send it away to a professional. They'll review it, analyze it, appraise it, and put on a scale of 1 to 10 on, or depending on the industry, coins are a little different, on how good that is. That particular Gretzky was a perfect 10 out of 10, best one that's ever been graded or checked. So that one's a bit of an anomaly. Normally they go for about $1,500 to $2,000-ish, depending on shape.
So is Gretzky still a popular card, regardless if it's a rookie card or not?
Yeah, Gretzky, the last time I checked and I was pricing some stuff out, he has over 52,000 individual different hockey cards. So somebody could just collect Gretzky, go broke, and still not even be a tenth of the way there.
So what are some of the other big names that people are looking to collect outside of Gretzky? Maybe a Bobby Orr rookie card? How about Guy Lafleur, Daryl Sittler, some of those other names?
You can't go wrong with any of the Hall of Famers. There's always going to be a market for those guys. But there's so many new rookies every year. There's a new crop coming up, and that keeps the hobby going fresh.
Now, outside of hockey cards, how about maybe football or baseball or even basketball cards?
Running into the same supply issue problems with those. They're heavily collected. They're underproduced right now, and whatever's being made is getting picked up by scalpers and flipped on eBay. The stuff that we can find, it's just the crazy high end stuff where $300 or $400 a pack, you get 2 cards in it. But it's really, really nice stuff to make up for it.
You know, it's funny, I'm just thinking back to a lot of these rare hockey cards I had, and I put them into the spokes of my bicycle when I was a kid, and now here we are 40 years later, these things could probably pay off the mortgage to my house if I would have taken better care of them, right?
I am glad you did that, and I'm glad for all the mothers that threw away the collections, because I wouldn't be in business if everybody kept their stuff. It wouldn't be worth anything.
Now, Grant, you also have a great selection of Hot Wheels vehicles. It's not just kids, but a lot of adults. I mean, I've been into your shop and I purchased a 65 Fastback Mustang Hot Wheel to add to my little collection as well. Are Hot Wheels still a hot item?
Oh, for sure, for sure. They're priced perfect for collectors. $2 a car. They're priced perfect for kids. And the way that they're marketed too, they've got the mainline ones, hundreds of different options a year. You could collect all those and not get into the higher end stuff. Now, Hot Wheels also have what they call treasure hunt cars. And when a store gets a case of 72 cars, only one in there is going to be marked as a treasure hunt car. And they usually have a little flame symbol on there to show you what you're after. And those are highly sought after. And there's even one step above super treasure hunts that the collectors go crazy for. They come with real rubber tires and fancier metal flake paint jobs.
Grant, would you say that maybe some of the muscle cars, like the American muscle cars, are hot items? Some of the Mopars, the Chargers, the Challengers, and then also the Mustangs and Camaros?
Definitely. In the Hot Wheels and in the bigger 1/18 scale cars too, the muscle cars in the bigger scale, you definitely can't keep in stock. And that's another one where they'll produce a batch and then you don't get your 65 Mustang, you better hope that somebody saved it on their shelf and is willing to part with it.
I saw as well there was a Mustang, I think it was a VW bus with a surfboard on it that went for over $100,000 or something? One Hot Wheel?
Yeah, the original releases, they call them the Sweet 16 cars, and there's some crazy little variations where they might have ran out of paint at the factory, so we'll just finish up the day with this other paint and call it good. But 40, 50 years later, those cars from the end of the batch are rare as heck and very, very expensive.
Now, what about some of the other types of toy cars, like dinky cars? Are they still quite popular, or is there more Hot Wheels?
Uh, there's so many different ones. Hot Wheels is good for the average collector, but the older collectors, they love getting into the dinky toys. Any of the older Matchbox, the Lesney toys. Yeah, there's always going to be a market for those. And the trick is finding them in good shape, because most of them spent the last 40 years buried in a garden someplace.
You hit the nail on the head. I mean, I've seen some people that have, antique toys still in the box, never been touched by human hands, which are worth a fortune. But then at the same time, I'm thinking, what a sad childhood. You never had a chance to play with your toy, right?
Open it and play with it. Even when I sell something expensive here, a mint-in package transformer from the 1980s, I tell a person, open it, put the stickers on it, enjoy it. That's what it was meant for. You're the last buyer. That's what it's, enjoy it.
So what are some of the older toys you have in your store there, Grant?
It's always changing. We rely on trades for a lot of stuff, so it's kind of whatever comes through the door. We've had a lot of old tin toys from the early 1900s come through here. I remember having a little toy wind-up boat with a propeller on the end of it. It was from about the 1940s, and every single time I picked that up, it drew blood. Every corner on it was razor sharp, and it was a children's toy from back in your grandpa's day. It's a miracle they made it to this age.
Wow. How about for the ladies and the young ladies too, like classic Barbies? I bet you they're fetching a good penny too, some of the dolls.
They are. We don't have many come through here though, unfortunately. I don't know if that stuff ends up in the antique shops or not. I wouldn't turn it away if it did come in, but yeah, few and far between, I hate to say. I think a lot of the Barbie collectors, they hold on to it forever. I don't blame them.
How about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? That was also pretty big when I was a kid. Is it popular now?
Not as much as it used to be, but anytime we get some of the old vintage toys, even the loose ones, out of package, missing all the accessories, I'll throw them in the dollar bin and they'll be gone the same day. People want them just to put on the shelf because they probably lost the accessories that quick when they were a kid anyway, so it looks just like they remembered.
How about some Star Wars memorabilia? Do you have much of that too?
Lots and lots of Star Wars stuff. It's been suffering the last couple of years since Disney took over. They really hurt the brand, unfortunately. The It probably dropped about to 10% of what it was before. Hopefully, the way the Mandalorian's been going is picking things back up and salvaging that. But thankfully, Star Trek is on a second and third renaissance, and it's bringing in a lot of collectors too.
You know, I joke with a lot of my buddies too. I say there were only 3 Star Wars movies: Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. There was nothing else after that. They're like, "Oh, you've missed out on so many great movies, Hal." You know,
And lots of good books.
oh yeah. Now, speaking of which, let's talk about comic books. What kind of old comic books are people really interested in?
The comic books, it's another one where unfortunately a lot of the industry is shifting towards digital. Like you buy a new comic now, and almost all of them come with another digital copy that you can download and read on your phone. That way you can grab the original, bag it away, and put it in the closet and never have to touch the thing. But I think that kind of goes against the spirit of comics. So we always sell our comics half price, even the old ones. We want to get the young collectors in there and keep them interested. And if you can trick a kid into reading with a comic book, not a bad thing either. So
I'm wondering if maybe some of the comic books went up in value with the release of some of these Marvel and DC movies.
they definitely did. I had an Iron Man #1 issue, and it booked in at $80, and it sat on my shelf for probably 4 years and didn't move. The movie came out, and just for giggles, I checked the price. It jumped to $1,000.
Wow.
I changed the price to $1,000. It sold within a week.
Wow, that is amazing. That's a pretty good profit. Congratulations.
Yeah. Well, that's what I get for carrying it for 35 years.
Well, I guess if you spread it out over that period of time, you're right. Grant, how about old coins? Do you carry many of those?
Yeah, lots of old coins. That's We got to rely on trade because coins you can't really order from a supplier. You have to wait for Grandpa's coin collection to come in here, but we specialize in that. And with silver doing a bit of a run or two commodity wise, it's hard to keep in stock. So we're always looking for people to bring in their coin collections.
Instead of just old collectible coins, what about coins that have been discontinued? Let's say the German Deutschmark. I've got a whole bunch of those at home, and maybe some Italian lira that no longer exist. Are they worthless, or are they actually worth some money?
Kids love them because they're like pirate treasure. We've got a great big bin of 3 for $1 coins, and that's where all my weird foreign stuff goes. And kids will get a great big bag, and it's cheap as heck to get out of here. And they got a pretty good fancy collection. Because a lot of those coins, especially the foreign ones, are really neat.
What are some of the more unusual items that you carry that collectors may be interested in?
We've had some weird things come through here. I've had some coal brought up from the wreck of the Titanic. Um, Little Aztec statue and a meteorite. I wanted to rub them together and see if I got superpowers, but the boss advised me against that one.
That's good. Now, do you have a lot of regulars who come in, usually, picking up items from you, maybe selling you items at the same time? Kind of like what we see with Pawn Stars, when people go in and they're always buying and selling from Rick and the guys? Not that you have a pawn shop, you've got a collector's shop, obviously, but.
We've got a nerdy version of that. I don't take offense to that because, we got to get our stuff from somewhere, and it's people bringing them in.
So if a viewer has some old stuff like we mentioned sitting in the garage or maybe tucked away somewhere in an old desk, cards, coins, comics, magazines, they shouldn't throw them away. They should maybe give you a call, see if something you might be interested in purchasing.
Oh, for sure. You never know what has value. One person's trash is another person's collectible. So bring it in, especially if it's something that's been sitting in there for years. There's a fine line between collector and hoarder. So maybe somebody will appreciate better than you. Bring it in. We'll definitely give you better than a garage sale for it, and we'll find somebody who will appreciate it properly.
So how do you actually figure out the value on it? Let's go back to some of the hockey cards because we're Canadian. We love hockey here in Canada. Let's say I bring in my Joe Sakic. I've got a rookie Joe Sakic. I've got a rookie Matt Sundin. I've got a rookie Ed Belfour. Do you actually look it up? Do you have a guide where you look up the pricing?
Oh, yeah. The good thing about cards is since 1990, there's been a magazine come out called The Beckett, and it's pretty much the Bible on anything close to cardboard. We just look up the price on there. You know what the price is on there, and then we go back and forth and find something comfy.
And to make sure that a card's in good shape, so the corners should not be bent at all, I guess, no creases in it.
Yeah, they want to be as crisp and perfect and fresh out of the pack as possible. But when you get to the older cards, that's just not possible. So you got to have a little bit of leeway for that. A lot of them were cut really, really crooked right from factory because a lot of them were hand cut instead of machine cut. You might see the picture or part of the card next to it bleeding over onto it. You got to have some leeway for that. You're not going to get your $1 million Gretzky, but if you have a dog-eared Gretzky, you still got several $100s. So
And I guess we shouldn't laminate it either, right? Because that may damage the card.
no, definitely not. That's a hard no. We've had so many good ones come through here, and it's just heartbreaking because they'll either take a hole punch and then pin it up to their bedroom walls, or laminate it, or tape it into a book, into a photo album, and it cooks the card, but maybe it'll fill somebody's set for a lot cheaper than buying a mint version would be.
Okay, before I let you go, I got to ask you one more thing. I'm a big fan of lava lamps. Are they still popular? Are they making a comeback? Please tell me they're making a comeback, lava lamps. Not the blue and the yellow ones. I'm talking about the red ones, right? They actually look like lava.
They never went away. My son has one for a night light that, we just bought him a couple weeks ago, and it's fantastic.
That is awesome. Glad to hear that. Thanks so much for joining us today and the trip down memory lane, Grant. I really appreciate it.
For sure. Thanks for having me.
Well, some Canadians think that religion is helpful for the country, but there are others who would disagree. But how many of us believe that religion is something that's actually important to Canada's economy? Well, today's guest says that that is exactly the case. I'm joined by Dr. Brian Grimm. He holds a doctorate in quantitative sociology and is the founding president of the Religious Freedom and Business Foundation. He's one of the world's leading experts on the relationship between religious freedom and the economy, and is also the author of a recent paper entitled The Hidden Economy: How Faith Helps Fuel Canada's GDP. That is a mouthful. Dr. Brian Grimm, thanks so much for being with us today. Welcome to Bridge City News.
It's great to be with you.
So can you first of all tell us a bit about what your organization does?
Yeah, so we're a private foundation, public foundation, non-religious foundation that helps businesses see that religious freedom for everyone, including people that don't have a religion, is good for economies and good for business, and then helps businesses promote a more diverse, religiously diverse and inclusive workforce for their own companies. So we both produce studies, but also work with companies directly to help them become more religiously friendly or religiously inclusive, however you might like to phrase it.
Mm-hmm. Now, your study estimates the economic value of religion to Canadian society at about $30 billion annually. And I think the mid-range was estimated at around $67 billion, and the high-end estimate puts it at an astounding $690 billion. So can you explain how you go about finding that out, and what do those numbers even mean?
Yeah, well, the high number is just one that takes into account the sort of spending power of religiously affiliated Canadians. So that's just a reference number. That's what their household income is. The households of families that are religious have that much spending power. So that's not really the one we focus on. The middle range is the one that we do focus on. And just to put that in context, that would the religious economy of Canada would make it a larger economy than 110 countries in the world. So it would be like the 72nd largest economy in the world if you think of national GDP. So that's no small number. The way we go about it is looking first at the receipts and the amount of money coming into congregations of all sorts, Christian, Muslims, Jewish, all the different faith congregations, and then look at how they spend that money. So if you think about that, that's money. People usually think that's money coming in, they spend on themselves, but it's actually fueling economies because you pay salaries, either it's clergy or groundskeepers. You pay, especially in Canada, for snow removal, from parking lots. They pay for lights, heating, electricity. But more than that, then we look at what is the value of what they do for society. So more than faith congregations are more than just organizations that tend to their own flocks, but they provide daycare, they provide services for people with addiction, they provide community gathering places, and all of that has economic value. So we calculate that up. We also look at faith institutions like hospitals, universities, as well as faith-related businesses, and that comes to that total.
It's interesting that you say business because when you first were explaining it, it sounds almost like a business model. But, then again, you get into how they help people. So there are some who might say that while religious organizations provide help for less fortunate, it doesn't actually translate into real dollars for the economy. But where do you see direct benefits to the economy? You mentioned educational.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, one is the direct spending. It's just money coming in and going out. That money doesn't just come into a collection plate and stay there and bury it under a mattress. It gets spent on community service and various program salaries, like I mentioned. The other is that some of the programs like Alcoholics Anonymous, if there wouldn't be faith congregations, almost half of them in Canada would have no place to meet. And so those have a spiritual aspect to them. Churches and other congregations open their doors to these, and we estimate that saves hundreds of lives every year. And that's if you count the loss of a life, statisticians count that as millions and millions of dollars for every premature death in terms of cost to the system, cost in lost wages, cost to families. So it's in some ways measuring the benefit is measuring the good that they do that prevents harm coming to people, such as addiction.
That's interesting. You also note that much of our healthcare comes from religious organizations. So can you explain this?
Well, so in Canada, of course, much of the education and healthcare systems came often from the Catholic Church. So the foundations of many of even education and healthcare in Canada, most of it has religious roots. Now, these days, most of the hospitals and schools have, especially hospitals, have become nationalized. But in the background, you have that. But there are significant numbers of private faith-based hospitals, educational institutions, and schools. And one thing I'd say, even though the schools, many of them are Catholic schools or other Christian schools, they still get some tax dollars supporting them. But that whole foundation of education and what they're providing is there because of their faith connection. So you walk into a faith-based school, and immediately you see that this is something different. Kids are going to, a church service or a mass, and they're getting different kinds of teaching. So for someone to say, well, it's, that's not significant. Actually, it is a tremendous contribution that religion continues to make to Canadian society.
So how would you respond to those who would argue that religion causes more problems than it's worth in Canada, especially when we're looking at some of the sex abuse scandals associated with religious leaders? And now, of course, the residential school atrocities are a huge focus, and then violent extremism. So how do you respond to that?
Well, certainly, religion can be one of the greatest sources of hope and goodness in the world. And it can also be, when misused, one of the greatest sources of hurt and tragedy in the world. So not to whitewash those problems, those are serious problems. One of the ways that we see in a society like Canada is that religious freedom provides a framework for dealing with times when religion falls short of its ideals or commits crimes even. So that religious freedom allows sort of, you could say, a competitive marketplace, again, going back to an economic analogy, that, if one church or one denomination or one faith group is guilty of some atrocity, society itself comes in and challenges that. And rather than criminalizing religion, it goes after criminal activities that may have happened within a religion. So I think that in the free market economy, when you include that to include religious freedom, freedom itself provides those checks and balances for things that, like anything, just like the internet, it's good, but there's also a dark side. So that check and balance that we have in free societies, I think, is one of the greatest assets to deal with the negative side of religion.
Now, you mentioned religious freedoms. So we've seen more restrictions on those religious freedoms recently in Western nations like the UK and the US, and right here in Canada. Is this currently, or will this at some point impact our economy negatively?
Yeah, well, absolutely. So, just to use a current example, many of the immigrants coming into Canada, sort of fueling the next generation of innovation, come from countries where religion is central to their identities. And so, if these folks come into Canada, whether they're Muslims or Sikhs or Hindus or Christians from from the global South or from the Middle East, if they don't feel that they're free to be their whole self, be that authentic self that faith is such an important part of, they're not going to feel like they can buy into the Canadian, project, so to speak. So that religious freedom's important for new immigrants, just as it is for other people in society. So when you feel like your faith, which for many people is a central part of their life, not everyone, but for those that it is, they don't go to work and think I'm just here to make money. They go to work, many, for a purpose to glorify God. And so in that kind of thinking, that if they don't feel that they have religious freedom, that innovative, sort of spirit that says we're gonna work hard and make our country great, it gets diminished.
Right. Now, by the way, is faith on the decline in Canada overall, or is it increasing?
So overall, I mean, the faith has been on the decline in Canada, looking at census data. But faith is resilient in that there was a theory of secularization, that secularization would eventually drive religion out and just be sort of living in a few souls. But that's not really what has happened. So many of the people in Canada who are devoutly faithful continue to be. And one of the sort of secrets is that people who are more religious tend to have more kids, and then they raise more kids. So sort of built into this religious change that's happening is also what's going to happen in the next generations. First, you have the immigration coming in where people are much more religious. Second, immigrants that even aren't religious, like Chinese coming in from mainland China. I think I saw a statistic that half of them become Christians once they come to Canada. So, religion is not something that's just, sort of locked in walls, in a church or, a mosque or a synagogue. It's something's living and active. And so, I expect the religious makeup of Canada to continue to change, grow in different ways in the years to come.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. And then what about in the US? Do you see differences between Canada and the US overall, where faith is either on the rise or the decline?
Um, the U.S., of course, tends to be a bit more religious and actively religious, more public religion in the United States. There's also been a similar decline, and sociologists have different explanations. One that I think makes sense to me is that religion has become very political in the United States. So it becomes a hot button issue. If you're following the news, the U.S. Catholic bishops are, debating whether or not Joe Biden should be allowed to take communion, receive the Eucharist, and that's political. So and Joe Biden's response was, well, for me, my faith is not politics. My faith is, what sustains my soul. So I think that the question of the future of American religion is wrapped up in the degree to which faith can sort of reclaim that soulful ground rather than a political ground. And I think that will bring have more people interested in faith. But when it becomes political, it becomes divisive, and that doesn't really bode well for the future of religious growth.
Yeah, it just seems like everything these days are becoming so political. It's ridiculous. We don't have very much time left, but really quick, there are occasional arguments that if religious organizations can help restore the family unit, it could greatly reduce addiction problems, depression, gang violence, crime, which would end up saving the government and our economy huge amounts of revenue. So any thoughts on that real quick?
Oh yeah. So I mean, what we find is that faith is a characteristic of many stable families. You can have a stable family and they don't have religion at all, but the data overwhelmingly show that where you have a more religiously active and involved family, they tend to have more longevity and a stronger family. When you have families, that's one of the most important resources for people facing addiction and other kinds of problems. Because I mean, we've done a lot of work with studying Alcoholics Anonymous and these other programs, and you can see such a difference between those who are addicted in these programs who have family support versus those who don't. And as they say in AA, you know, you're either institutionalized, dead, or you're following the AA program. That's one of their slogans, and you really see that when people don't have that family support, they tend to either get incarcerated or overdosing as well. So family is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much for being with us today, Dr. Grimm. We appreciate having you on.
That's great, and glad to be with you today.
Absolutely. Dr. Brian Grimm is the founding president of the Religious Freedom and Business Foundation and the author of a recent paper entitled The Hidden Economy, How Faith Helps Fuel Canada's GDP. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.